Atro, Atro. Camera's over here. Over here, man.
Oh. So, hello everyone. There'll be another commentary on Skyblock politics that apparently no one cares about. Now, this time I'll be talking about the admin's most recent odd idea, done soul-binding of absolutely everything on the Crimson Isles. So, first, a bit of context. Crimson Isles was released April 2023, so almost 3 years ago. God, I'm old. Which released shortly after the original Museum update on November 21st and the Stranded on January 22nd. Both the Museum and Stranded were updates that pushed the players to be more independent and less reliant on the economy. Museum did this by pushing people to actually get all of the different items in the game and keeping them for themselves, not always just buying it and then selling it off, but keeping them. And Stranded was a profile like Iron Man that does not encounter the economy on a regular basis. Both of them pushed the players to be more independent. This seems like the admins wanted this. And that's the idea that admins had when pushing the Crimson Isles update and choosing to make all of the Crimson Isles materials soulbound. Obviously we don't know this, we don't know what admins are thinking. Especially back then because they were not communicating that well, and we don't have access to internal documents like game design documents to know. But we do know that the admins decided to do it. They decided that everything on the Crimson Isles would be soulbound, well at least all of the materials acquirable. This is how it's been up until now. In the most recent alpha, Best Underwears, Chocolate Factory Editions, Crimson Isles Queller and more, on November 13th, 2024. They changed a lot of things, mostly Best Hunterwares, Chocolate Factory and Crimson Isles things. And a lot of those changes were good, and the good ones got pushed up to the main server. However, all of the Crimson Isles update things were kept back and are being still updated, refined and changed on the alpha up until today. This includes the Great Un-Soulbinding. Now, the list of items to be unsoul-bound is everything. Most of these things, yes, they're irrelevant. Players either don't use those items anyway, or you could make those items into some kind of weapon or armor piece that you could sell to the auction house, so the fact that the materials were soulbound wasn't important. However, the list also includes heavy pearls, Kudra teeth, and nether stars. These three should not be unsoulbound, is my opinion. And that's what I want to talk about. Now, I believe the best way of explaining why I'm against unsoulbinding these three is by an example. The best weapon in the entire game right now, when it comes to melee swords, is the midas. Before it was the midas, it used to be the Dark Claymore. The Dark Claymore, the end sword at the far end of your Catacombs adventure, scaling all the way through the normal throws, and then even more challengingly through the master throws, all the way to fighting the Wither King and defeating him. Finally gaining access to this Dark Claymore, the most powerful melee weapon in the entire game, requiring Master 7 completion and Catacombs 36 minimum. Mostly you would get it even later because you wouldn't get to Master Floor 7 by Catacombs 36. But now it's the Midas sword. A sword which technically you can acquire within 10 minutes of logging on for the first time, if you just get a little bit of help from a friend. And sure, there's the combat requirement of 20 on the sword, but that's easy, that's a piece of cake. Anyone can get to combat 20. So the only limiting factor between having your own Midas, being combat 20, and that sword you have being the best weapon in the entire game is coins. It's a lot of coins, but only coins. If you don't dungeonize the Midas, it doesn't even have a dungeon requirement. The best weapon in the entire game. It's just coins and combat level 20. And now the admins are threatening to do the same to armors. Because the best armors in the entire game, obviously, 15-star Infernal Kudra armors. By design as well. Back when they released the Crimson Isles in 2020, it was specifically one of the main points of the update, that hey, this is Kudra, and Kudra is going to drop you the best armors in the game. It was the point back, it was one of the big points and selling points of this update back then. And they took so much work. You had to go through your faction quest, complete and gather your reputation, go into Kudra again and again, grinding your Wither Stars, grinding your Kudra Teeth, and every day remembering to do your heavy pearls. And after months of dedication and work, you would have the best sets in the entire game. It was an feat, it was an achievement, it was great. And that's how it's been. That's how it's been, honestly. But now, the admins are going to go with Un-Soulbinding all of these materials, and the armor sets are going to become like Midas sword. Only coins. Yeah, sure, there's some requirements, completing the respective Kudra tier, base for base, hot for hot, burning for burning, and so on. And yeah, some scaling combat requirements. But even those combat requirements are too low. Remember, Infernal is supposed to be the end game set. Why does it have a combat requirement of only 42? It can easily be combat 50. And it wouldn't even hurt anyone, really. You don't need an Infernal set of Kudra before combat 50. And all of this change that they're proposing, I think is bad. And it leads to worse game feeling, game loop, game health, honestly. Because why would you do all of these interesting quests and get these difficult and hard to achieve requirements for different armor sets and gear if you can just AFK combat, get a few combat levels, get your friends to carry you to Kudras, and then buy the best set in the entire game? It's insulting. It's insulting to the players who have already gotten their Kudra sets. Not even just Infernals, even the people with Burning and Hot. It's insulting to them as well. Because they have done it. They have gone and done Kudra. They have gone and fought that mostly broken crate phase, and they've gone and gone through it. They've gotten their essence, gotten their heavy pearls, and they've gotten their armor sets. And now, all of that work is being mostly invalidated. Because now any player with enough coins and a fraction of the effort and work can just buy the armor sets. It's even worse when you consider that you can pay to win coins. So it's not even like gathering coins, then just pay to win a little bit of work to achieve the same result that these people who did so much work put in. And I don't like that. Now, there's a few different points that I've heard people argue when it comes to this. I'm going to be first mentioning the points I've heard against, and then my own replies to them. Now, the first one, most common one, is that this gear, these Kudra armors, more so the Fiery and Infernals, that those sets are inaccessible to new players. Yes, they are. Infernal and even Fiery Kudra armors are very, very difficult to get. I don't even have a set of those. And I'm not complaining. I'm confidently in the end game. But I haven't done the work. So I don't deserve the sets. Why should a new player, or even like a early mid-game, early game player, even a early late game player have access to Infernal? They shouldn't. They don't need those sets. I've gone through the game, I've done everything. I've fought all kinds of different bosses, even tier 4 places, without any Kudra armors. They're not necessary, they are just there to make it more fun and more effective. But why should these new players just receive this thing that other people should put so much work into getting? Secondly, I've heard that the requirements that already exist on the armors and are being added would be enough. So while I agree on the part of having a Kudra requirement, fighting the Kudra of the same tier as the armor set, I like that. The only thing with that is that you can easily get carried. If you go into a random party finder for basic or hot, you can almost almost certainly just get carried. That more rarely, but maybe you could achieve that with burning. And if you have friends, or you can pay for carries, you can get yourself the fiery and infernal completions as well. So they are kind of like a non-requirement. They are less so good requirement and more so a reputation requirement, but reputation is easy to get. On the other hand, we have the scaling combat requirement. I like it. I think that the base and a hot one, being 22 and 27 respectively, are pretty good. Maybe the burning one is kind of good, but then fiery and infernal shouldn't be that low. They should be significantly higher. Honestly, I would say make infernal combat level 50 and fiery level 40. Or at least like something higher than what it is. They are changing how the abilities work, is another point I've heard. This is a different thing. The fact that they're changing the abilities doesn't matter to the fact that the armor sets are still the best. And the issue I'm taking is that new players can just get the best as fast, like at a fraction of the effort that older people have put in. Power creep is a real thing, and mostly when it is a game that's not even fully released, that's fine. But this kind of power creep is a bit insane. I think you can agree. And changing the abilities is more so to compensate for the loss of attributes that the armor sets will have. And for that loss of attributes, I think the ability changes are cool and interesting and good, but they're not related to this. Other materials are also being un-soulbound. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a thing that's happening, and it doesn't really matter. Most of these items and things were not even that important back then. And not even now. But specifically, Kudra Teeth and Heavy Pearls are pretty important. I would argue that Wither Stars could be un-soulbound. This would generally, what I can see happening, is that if they un-soulbind Wither keys, people will be able to get a lot more Kudra keys, which would make people do more Kudra, which would make Kudra gear, Crimson Essence, and those kind of things fall in price. But if we keep Kudra Teeth as soulbound, then that wouldn't really cause as big of an issue, I think. I've also heard that I'm the only one who has this opinion. On the screen now, there's a picture of me making a comment, having made a comment on the forums under the previously mentioned alpha post. It's on the 4th page, so quite far back. Yet, it has 16 likes, effectively. The last one is also a like. It's talking about how it's a symbol that often represents that people like this and that's like a good fix idea. 16 likes on a 4th page post is pretty unlikely. It doesn't really happen that often. It happens very rarely, honestly. Yet my post got that. It means that those people who are dedicated enough to go and scroll on an alpha post to the 4th page, those people really agree with me. And those people are the kind of people that I think Hypixel should respect the opinion of. Not only those people, obviously, don't only trust forums, trust the people in Discords and on the game as well, but just those kind of dedicated people should be the ones you trust. Now, some people also argue that money is enough of a requirement. Technically I agree with you. Money can work as a requirement, but not one I like as a game designer. As a game designer, I would want to encourage and lead people to playing the different aspects, events and activities and things in my game. I would want them to do a bit of everything, to try out and find their favorites. But coin requirements just incentivize people to do the one most effective way of making money. The activities don't matter. The fun things you've made for the game don't matter. If something can be broken and exploited for more coins, people will do it, and they will optimize to do it even more and even harder. That's not as much fun. And as a game designer, I don't think that's very good. But technically, money is enough of a requirement. Except for also pay to winning. also getting gifts, contraband as it's commonly referred to. But those are a minor edge case that most of the time doesn't come up. And lastly, I've also heard that the Crimson Isles was never meant to be like a solo experience. And sure, it was never meant to be fully a solo experience. You can still, Kudra is still a cooperative event, 4 people go in. You can do the mini-bosses as a group, making them go by faster. You can still do things together, but the materials and the grind was made individual. And that was made individual by design, because the admins did make things co-op soulbound. They made them soulbound, and that shows us that they intended for the progression to be individualized, but the activities to be shared. And that was good. I like that. They should have just stuck with that and not make this change. But this is a topic that's important, and people should speak about it. I haven't heard people comment on this really, and they should, because this is massive. They are changing first the swords and now the armor sets to be almost purely coin-based. Is that really the Hypixel we want? A game where the only thing that matters is coins? I would say that the somewhat large and growing Iron Man audience of the game would disagree. I would say that the entire Stranded community disagrees. I would say that people who play Goldman or challenge themselves by playing Iron Man style would disagree. And I would say that most other players disagree too.